Death at Gallows Green, Chapter 8. Lady Stanhope's manservant proved to be the thief. I'm sorry to say, a great pity too, for he had fine manners and was quite handsome. Ah well, but it often turns out so, does it not? The greater the servant's apparent trustworthiness, the greater the cause to distrust him. Always keep the silver under lock and key, I say, and always secure the jewels. Beryl Bardwell, the Rosicrucian's Ruby. Oh, Kate, dear Kate, I am so very glad to see you. Marriage hasn't changed you one bit, Ellie, Kate said, returning her friend's warm embrace as they stood in a corner of the Melford drawing-room. Not at all, Eleanor Marston Farley asked with a little pout, displaying a dainty white arm decked with diamonds. Beside her stood a short, stout, weary-looking man of 40 or so, wearing a pince-nez on his too short nose and garbed in a double-breasted frock coat and a white satin waistcoat strained across the buttons. Eleanor took his left hand and pulled him forward, smiling winsomely as she made introductions. Miss Ardley lives very near Marston Manor, Mr. Fairley. She was a guest at our wedding, you will recall. Mr. Fairley might well not recall meeting her, Kate thought, especially since the guests had numbered nearly 500. But she could not forget the wedding. The Marston Fairley nuptials had been celebrated at fashionable St. Paul's in Knightsbridge, whose wedding register was a roster of social luminaries. It was a glittering event for which Lord Marston was said to have laid out the equivalent of a year's rents. Mr. Fairley peered at Kate over his pince-nez. Miss Ardley, to be sure. He coughed slightly. Mrs. Fairley has spoken of you. I'm glad, Kate said, looking at Eleanor. I think of her often. It was true. Life at Bishop's Keep was always interesting, but often lonely, for although Kate was surrounded by servants, there was no one to whom she could talk openly. Ellie had not yet proved to be that kind of friend, but she might have been, had they had more time together. Miss Fairley might perhaps enjoy a renewal of your acquaintance with you, Mr. Fairley remarked speculatively, as if Eleanor were not standing at his elbow. Perhaps if you come up to London, something might be arranged. If the thought of Kate's visit gave Mr. Fairley any pleasure, he did not reveal it. Kate knew from Eleanor's premarital confidences that he was a widower, his first wife having been a woman of no particular family who had borne him only one child, a son. Mr. Fairley's fortune had been established in the 1850s by his grandfather Franklin Fairley, the esteemed founder of Fairley's finest fancy candies, and on this account he was a man of some considerable consequence. However, he was in trade and went daily to an office in the Fairley Building in Lombard Street, and hence could not aspire to any particular social recognition beyond that accorded to a newly rich man who could keep a fine house, 3 carriages, 2 footmen, with crested buttons and gold lace. But he could use his wealth to marry the social distinction that he lacked, and so he had. His father, like his grandfather, had been a chocolatier. Eleanor's was a baron. It was exactly the kind of marriage any man in business must have longed to make. Poor Eleanor, Kate thought. But then Eleanor's diamonds caught her eye, and she thought again. She felt it was wrong to marry for anything other than love, and she wouldn't do it. But society's marriages were made for society's reasons, and had very little to do with the heart's deeper motives. If Eleanor were dissatisfied with the choice she made, mostly, Kate knew, at the urging of her mother, she did not show it. Indeed, she looked exceedingly well in rich turquoise silk, with tight-fitting bodice and diamonds at her wrist, her ears, and her throat. She was obviously using her husband's fortune to suit herself. Eleanor smiled at Mr. Fairley and fluttered the ivory fan fastened to her wrist with a gold cord. "Would you allow us a few moments?" she asked. When he inclined his head and moved away, Eleanor's pretty mouth tightened slightly, and the lightness vanished from her voice. "I must talk to you, Kate. I have just discovered something terribly unsettling, and I am hoping that you will be able to help me." "I trust that all is well with you, Ellie," Kate said, allowing herself to be pulled a little apart from the crowd. Eleanor's mouth tightened imperceptibly. "It is not about myself that I am concerned, Kate. It is about Mamma." Kate was surprised. Lady Henrietta Marston was a strong woman, law unto herself. Even Lord Marston acquiesced to her wishes. "I hope your mother is not ill." "Not ill," Eleanor said. She leaned closer and lowered her voice. "There has been a theft, Kate. One of the servants has stolen my mother's antique emeralds." "How terrible for her," Kate said. Everyone in England who could possibly afford it used domestic help, even if only a young girl to help with cooking and cleaning. And many who had servants suffered from moments of doubt and fear and even terror. There were frequent reports in the newspapers of servants making off with the silver, and even, quite recently, of a lady's maid who murdered her mistress and fled to France with that lady's jewels and her best dresses. The dour, black-shawled dowager walked past and said a word of acerbic greeting to Eleanor. She smiled and bowed, replied, and then turned back to Kate. "Fortunately," she said behind her fan, "Mamma does not yet know of the theft." Kate raised her eyebrows. "She does not yet know of it," Eleanor went on, "because I myself had a loan on the emeralds, a necklace, earrings, bracelet, and 2 rings. They are quite lovely, but several of the stones are flawed, so while they are valuable, they are not priceless. I wore them at a ball given in my honor several weeks ago. Shortly after the ball, I returned the jewels to their box in the safe in Mamma's sitting room, with the exception of the small tea ring, which I had forgotten. Yesterday, when I went to return the ring, the box was gone." "Perhaps your mother took them," Kate said. "My mother does not know that they are gone," Eleanor replied with some agitation. "When I mentioned the tea ring, she asked me to give it to her so that she could put it with the others." "What did you do?" Eleanor colored. "I told her a lie," she said with the discomfort of one who has been raised to tell her mother the truth. "I said that I had forgotten the ring and left it in London." "And you deduce from this that Mamma does not yet know that her jewels are missing. The safe is quite crowded with other things, and this particular box is small. She wears the jewels only on special occasion and sets a great sentimental store by them. Okay, she will be livid when she discovers that they have been stolen, and I myself feel an appalling responsibility." "You?" Kate asked in some surprise. "Why should you hold yourself responsible?" Eleanor bit her lip. "Because I fear that when I returned the jewels, I failed to lock the safe. I was in a great hurry to dress for dinner, and Mamma's footman came in with the message just as I was putting the emeralds back. He distracted me with a question, and I left the room without assuring myself that the safe was locked." Kate frowned. "Do you then suspect the footman?" "Lawrence?" Eleanor's lavender eyes clouded. "I fear I must. I am very sorry, for he has been at the manor for 7 years, and he has been a help to me on many occasions. 2 years ago in London, I was involved in a rather foolish liaison. Lawrence carried messages for me and kept my confidence when he might easily have betrayed me to Mamma for his advantage. Since then, I felt obliged to him and would hate to see him sent up on charges on my account." She put her hand on Kate's arm. "Can you not see why I feel such a terrible responsibility? If I did not close the safe properly, I placed temptation in Lauren's way. I might have caused his downfall." "If it's true that the footman took the jewels," Kate said gently, "the moral fault is his, not yours. Have you taken your suspicions to your father or to your brother Bradford?" At the mention of Bradford, Eleanor pulled herself upright. "I'm sorry to say that my brother and I have not been on the best of terms of late, and as for speaking to my father," she paused, "I will, of course, if I must, but I hope that you might be able to help." "I?" Kate was surprised. "How could I help?" Eleanor's shoulders lifted helplessly. "I'm not at all sure," she said. "I was hoping that perhaps you might discover whether Lawrence took the jewels, and if he did, how he disposed of them. If redeeming them is not too costly, I may be able to persuade Mr. Fairley to assist. I've come to you because I know that it was through your investigations that the murder of your aunt was brought to justice, and I thought—" "I very much fear, Ellie," Kate broke in, "that you overestimate my abilities. In any event, I do not see how I might have the opportunity to do the kind of investigation required in this case. I think you must speak with your father or your brother about this matter and let them handle it." Eleanor looked crestfallen. "I suppose you're right, but I did hope so. You're sure, Kate?" I have a great interest in mysteries, Kate said firmly, thinking of Beryl Bartwell, but I am no detective. I fear you must pursue this without my assistance, Ellie. She smiled and deliberately changed the subject. I trust that your disagreement with your brother is not serious. Eleanor fanned herself. Probably not. Her mercurial face brightened and her voice became lighter. Do you know that he has a romantic interest in you? I doubt that it is a serious interest, Kate said, matching the lightness of her friend's tone. She had long since come to the terms with the fact that she was not a beauty. Her face and figure were presentable, and her mop of mahogany hair attractive when she bothered to comb and dress it properly, which she did not always do. But she spurned the social arts of flattery and flirtation, and said what she thought without worrying much about how it might be received. Hers was not a style that readily attracted lovers who seemed to wish for more compliance than she was willing to offer. And to tell the truth, she was glad, for she had not met many men, either American or British, whose romantic attentions she would welcome. If spinsterhood was the price to pay for her independence, she was more than ready to pay it. It may be more serious than you think, Eleanor said with a mysterious smile. And have you heard from our mutual friend Sir Charles Sheridan? Did you know that he has returned from Paris and is staying at Marston Manor? I had not heard, Kate replied casually, not betraying her interest. Before leaving for Paris, Sir Charles had called twice. They had walked among the ruins on the other side of the lake, where he had found a rare species of bat that interested him greatly. She found him quite attractive and enjoyed his company, had indeed almost thought that he might be a man whose attentions she could welcome. But something told her that it was the bats that brought him to Bishop's Keep, rather than an interest in her. Now, thinking of Sir Charles and remembering his investigative skills, Kate said, "You might speak to Sir Charles about your mother's jewels, Ellie." Eleanor brightened. "What a splendid idea! Mr. Fairley and I will be going back to the manor on Monday to spend the week. Mamma is planning a garden party to introduce him to the neighborhood." Yes, I know. I've been invited," Kate said. "I can't be sure, of course," Eleanor went on in a teasing tone, "but I suspect that both Sir Charles and Bradford are interested in you. Tell me, Kate, which do you prefer?" Kate returned Eleanor's teasing with a deliberately arch smile. "Oh, come now, Ellie. Sir Charles is interested only in my bats, and your brother has spent most of the past few months in London immersed in his automobile investments. Faced with such masculine preoccupations, what is a woman to do? I think I shall not prefer at all, but remain exactly as I am, unmarried and independent, answering neither to a baron-to-be nor a knight who loves bats." Eleanor shook her head in despair. "Oh, Kate, you are so wicked. Whatever shall I do with you?" "Yes," Kate said decisively, "I am very wicked and very unmarried, and I intend to stay that way."